And hello, everybody. Welcome to Narativ on a Tuesday night. It's our first Tuesday night of the season. It's good to be with you tonight. I'm Zev Shalev. Our producer, Heidi Kuda, is here too. How are you, Heidi?
I am doing well. I'm very excited for the show tonight.
It is going to be an exciting show. We have a fantastic main segment tonight, which is going to be all about the anti vaxxers and about how their messages are getting shaped and who is shaping their messages. And that's going to be coming up later on in the show. I assume you know about Nicki Minaj. It's a big talking point of everyone today and her big tweet.
Yes, about the big cojones.
The big cojones is exactly right. We'll be talking about that as part of the segment as well. And then later on in the show, in our final segment, I'm going to be talking about that famous painting of Bill Clinton in a blue dress and another one of George Bush playing with a toy plane and a stack of collapsed dominoes, that apparently Jeffrey Epstein owned those paintings. And we're going to be talking to Kirby Summers about whether he really owned both paintings and what the significance of those are, because indeed there are very significant paintings, especially after 9/11. But all of that's coming up a little later on. But first, the starting block. And so this is where we do the big news of the day. And the big news of the day is coming out of California, actually, which is where you are. Gavin Newsom still, we think, will be the governor of California at the end of today's election. Tell us what's been going on there.
Oh, he better be. You know the story. Dark money trying to take out our governor, GOP trying to cheat. And we are just hoping that all the Democrats show up because there's a lot more of us.
It sure is. And it would be just a shock if Ellison, is that his name, Ellison? Ellison? I don't remember. The
are you talking about Larry Elder?
Yeah, Elder.
Yeah.
Yes. We're shocked if he became the governor. It would be just a terrible thing, not something we'd want to see. Although I've been very impressed with Newsom. I'm wondering if he's doing this as a bit of a run into a presidential potential campaign in at least 28. We'll see what happens in 24. The big news of the day that's also keeping everyone's attention is the book by Bob Woodward and Robert Costa from the Washington Post about the final days of the White House. It's a book called Peril. It has some shocking pieces of reporting in there, which are quite stunning. One of them involves this exchange between Pence and Donald Trump. If these people say you had the power, would you want it? Let me just flip this over so you can read along. Wouldn't you want to? Trump asked. I wouldn't want any one person to have that authority, Pence said. But wouldn't it be almost cool to have that power? Trump asked, according to Woodward and Costa. No, Pence said. He went on, I've done everything I could and then some to find a way around this. It's simply not possible. Then Trump goes, no. You don't understand, Mike. You can't do this. I don't want to be your friend anymore if you don't do this. If you don't do it, I picked the wrong man 4 years ago, the president charged. You're going to wimp out.
Wow.
And, the thing that everyone's seizing upon in that exchange is the fact that he said, I've done everything I could possibly do and then some to find a way around this, which means even though Mike Pence has been framing himself as a bit of a hero for everything he did that day, he maybe was trying to find a way around the predicament that the president had put him in, and maybe he was in support of it. On the other hand, he was talking to the president at the time, and maybe that would have been enough for him to say that line about trying to find a way around it. It's an interesting exchange, and there's another one from Mark Milley, but I won't read that now because it'll take up too much time. But certainly a great book that it needs to be read, Peril. And you have some big news coming out of California. This is about the anonymous Epic hacks. Tell us what you found out.
Oh, my goodness. Well, we knew Operation Jane was coming. That was the name Anonymous gave to their hack of the draconian. They said they were going to mess with Texas, and they did. So wake up Saturday morning. What you're looking at is the screenshots that I took from the TexasGOP.org site. Clearly, Anonymous got in. Some old school guys because they posted Rick Astley and
I know. I was wondering what Rick Astley was doing there. It's exciting when Rick Astley shows up.
I had to watch the entire video to bleach my eyes from some of the other images that they showed.
Oh, really?
What you're seeing on the right, though, is the really big news, and that is the Epic hack. And Epic is the site that hosts the server that hosts a lot of what is associated with the Gabs, the Parlors. Why they're hosting TexasGOP.org, I don't know. It's all very strange.
Wait, that's really interesting. Are you saying the same server company that hosts Gab and Parler also hosts the GOP of Texas?
I am telling you that.
How
Yes.
weird is that?
and the guy who broke the story out of Texas, a really cool guy, Stephen Monticelli, he had been tracking why was Epic affiliated with the whistleblower site also out of Texas. So a lot more to come on that. And even Elder seems to have been swept up in it, Larry Elder here in California, because according to breaking news, there was already a site queued up claiming that the election was fraudulent, claiming data, and we haven't even had, the election's not even finished. It doesn't finish till 8 o'clock tonight. So
they know their playbook. If they're losing, they start to deny that the election was fair. It's just what they do now. We know it now, so maybe it's going to be a little less effective than before. But that's a great story. Congratulations on getting that.
Yeah.
Amazing. Final quick one for us on tonight's starting block is this one. We told you about Charles Bousman. He's the suspected Russian spy that was working in Pennsylvania. He's a good friend of Sean Moon. They seem to be collaborating a lot as they were heading into January the 6th, the insurrection. There was some question about whether Charles Bousman was actually at the insurrection on January the 6th. And in fact, we can now say definitively that he was at the January 6th insurrection. That's because the Blue Hats team that has been doing a lot of the open source investigation around this has identified him a couple of times now in the crowd using all the surveillance cameras that were available on that day and are open sourced. They've been able to now say definitively that Charles Bousman was, in fact, was there on January the 6th, if there are any doubters out there. And also, this picture that we showed you during the show last week, but also in our article about Bousman, is of Sean Moon and Bousman. There was also some question about when and where that was taken. That was taken on January 3rd, as we'd stated. It's also definitely taken inside the Bousman church, which is the scene, we think, of a number of right-wing extremist meetings, including the launch of the National Justice Party, which is basically the Nazi Party of America. So there you go, an update for you on that story, and terrific work by the Blue Hats team. As always, the open source investigators have done a phenomenal job, and thanks so much for bringing it to us and collaborating with us as we bring this news to the public. And that's the starting block for today. Coming up next, we're going to talk about the anti-vaxxers. So stay with us for that. And also stay with us for the advertisers, because the advertisers are really important for the show. There's no ways we could afford to do any of this programming without the support that we get from viewers like you, but also our sponsors. So we'll be right back after this with our show, with our segment about the anti-vaxxer myths.
Well done.
Hey, hi friends, thanks for supporting Narativ. This portion of the show is brought to you by Policy Genius. Summer's coming to an end and the leaves are about to fall. And while Mother Nature does her thing preparing for the new season, you can do yours by getting free life insurance quotes with Policy Genius. You could save $1,300 or more per year on life insurance by using Policy Genius simply to compare policies. The licensed experts at Policy Genius work for you, not the insurance companies, so you can trust them to help you navigate every step of the shopping and buying experience. Policy Genius's excellent service has been endorsed by thousands of 5-star reviews on Trustpilot and Google, and eligible applicants can get covered in as little as a week thanks to an award-winning policy option that swaps the standard medical exam requirement for a simple phone call. This exclusive policy was recently rated #1 by Forbes Advisor, higher than options from Ladder, Ethos, and Bestow. Visit policygenius.com and you'll be able to work out your coverage needs in minutes and find your best price for life insurance. And Policy Genius will take care of the paperwork and scheduling at no cost to you. They never sell the information you give them to other companies or add extra fees. Head to policygenius.com to get started right now. Policy Genius, when it comes to insurance, it's nice to get it right. Hi friends, thanks for supporting. Oh, sorry, you almost saw that twice. We're back now live, and that was the recorded advertising segment. So thanks very much for supporting our sponsors. And now that we're back live, let me bring in our two guests. Anne Nelson, who you recall from before, is the author of Shadow Network, and Nick, I'm blanking out here because this all caught me by surprise. Someone help me here.
Nick Sawyer.
Nick Sawyer. Thank you, Nick. I'm sorry about that.
No
Boy, this is live television. In case you missed it, it's live television by one man in front of a control room. Nick Sawyer you're a medical doctor, an emergency room doctor in Sacramento. So you've been seeing firsthand a lot of the impact of what the Delta variant has been doing to America. So tell us a little bit about how things are going for you right now, and just briefly what it's like to be in an ER these days.
It's so I'm a little bit old school. I've been practicing medicine since the original SARS-CoV-2 virus came through and swept through the nation. And it's been a wild ride. Most recently, what people are saying about the Delta variant being a pandemic of the unvaccinated it's absolutely true, and it's really sad. It's always been sad to have people, losing life to the coronavirus, but it's especially sad now because we're starting to see younger and younger people come in,
Mhm.
and almost every one of them is unvaccinated. I had a patient in their 20s die in our emergency department from COVID-19 not all that long ago, and it was just devastating to all of us because we're there to save lives, and we know it was preventable.
It's kind of everyone's talking about the epidemic of the unvaccinated, but it's also the epidemic of the younger people. It really does seem to be something that's hitting younger people. And I just want to say good evening to you officially, because we'll come back to you in just 1 second. But I just wanted to say hi and welcome back to the show, because you've done a fantastic lot of work in the Shadow Network and elsewhere, describing the CNP in particular, and how they are influencing a lot of the political discourse going on in America right now. So just if you could just briefly describe to everybody who the CNP are.
The Council for National Policy is a consortium of fundamentalist conservatives and business interests, many of which are based in fossil fuel industries. And what they've done over the last 40 years is set up a kind of a machine that includes media platforms like Salem Media and Salem Radio, major donors like the DeVos family of Michigan, and strategists. And together they've been trying to fairly successfully take over the Republican Party and through that take over the country. Their goal is to have an economic benefit by reducing or eliminating all the taxes possible and eliminating social programs, and really imposing some of their values, which I would say are anti-feminist, anti-LGBT, etc., on the rest of us.
And last time you were here, you helped us understand that they were also fomenting the insurrection. And then they really were a large part of the team that put together the events of January the 6th by busing people in and organizing the funding and many other factors. We also know that they've been involved in things like supporting the appointments of Justice Kavanaugh and Justice Coney Barrett. And as well, just behind Donald Trump all the way since he was first elected. This is a very extreme right organization. There's really no other way to describe them.
That's right. And they've made a point of purging moderate Republicans. So for them, John McCain was as big an enemy as a Democrat. And they really have wanted to eliminate the political center in the United States. And the other thing that they've tried to do is sow distrust among the sources of knowledge and education. So they've attacked the medical establishment and the CDC and Dr. Fauci. They've attacked professional journalists. They've attacked universities and tried to make voters in their target areas so distrustful that they don't know what to believe. And they subscribe to their media systems, which are often disseminated through their churches. And they're doing a lot of harm.
They are indeed. Now, all those things that we've mentioned up to now are, sort of understandable in a political context. What's very hard to understand is how you run, COVID disinformation and vaccination disinformation campaigns when you're facing this kind of figure with 243,000 children testing positive for COVID just last week in the United States. I mean, that is a phenomenal figure that really strikes any parent, and it's amazing to think that there's an American organization that's even remotely involved in something like that. This story really struck me. It's a story of two young kids in South Carolina who died on the same day of COVID in the same school district, ages 9 and 15, I think. We really are seeing, as Nick, as you'd mentioned, the deaths of very, very young people because of the Delta variant. And maybe you want to talk a little bit more about that, about how, how this disease is affecting people who are unable to get vaccinated because under 12-year-olds can't get vaccinated.
Yeah, the thing that we're seeing is the parents are coming in with their children, and they themselves are unvaccinated, and then their children come back and they come in with sniffles, or they have a cold, and they have COVID. Fortunately, it is true that the vast majority of children do okay with COVID. That is true. But at the same time, the more COVID runs uncontrolled, and the more kids that become affected with it, the more serious illness we're going to see amongst younger children, and the more deaths we're going to start to see. The other issue is that when I talk to the parents, I take some time to talk to the parents about getting vaccinated in order to protect children. So there's not like this continuous transmission from child to parent to parent to child as the school year starts. And the really kind of sad thing is that I'm hearing is, people are scared. They're scared of getting the vaccine because of the disinformation. When I ask them, why are you scared? They start to tell me some of the talking points that they've heard on television. Somebody literally the other day told me, my friend told me that her friend had been vaccinated and they put a magnet on him and it stuck. I've heard all of the conspiracy theories directly from patients themselves, and it's very, very concerning because we're headed into the winter months, and it's going to get cooler outside, and people will begin to head indoors. Like I said ago, school is opening, and there's also another myth that kids don't get COVID. I had a family member tell me kids don't get COVID straight out, and I was like, well, of course they do. And just in brief, what ended up happening is not only were they not vaccinated, but they wouldn't allow us to test their child with for COVID vaccine. They didn't even want to know.
Wow.
And I tried to explain to them, the importance of this is, yes, your child will most likely be fine, and we're always here for you 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 in case something should happen. But if your child has COVID, we want to make sure that you quarantine to protect others. And they absolutely refuse to get the child tested.
So to be sure that anyone who's not vaccinated is potentially impacting other people. I mean, it's really not just about you. It is about everybody else that you come into contact with, but also your children, and your children could be impacting other people that they come in contact with. So the idea that any of this is really a choice that you can make just based on your personal, beliefs is just wrong. You really are hampering society, affecting society, and maybe even costing lives. I looked last week at these last 7 days of deaths, and it's no surprise, I guess, to people who've been following what's going on in Florida with DeSantis and in Texas with Abbott. But these are the states with the most deaths in the last 7 days. 2,448 in Florida and 1,822 in Texas. It's much higher than any other state. And that's because the number of vaccinations there are so much higher. It's also because, DeSantis and Abbott are, I guess, trying to be presidential nominees at some point. And this is why they are running campaigns and running their administrations looking like there is no COVID, or that people do not have to get vaccinated, or that this is some sort of, attack on freedoms, which of course it isn't. I don't know, Anne, if you want to pick up on what's Abbott and DeSantis have been doing.
Well, they're not operating alone. And what's important to understand here is that there's this whole parallel media system that a lot of us are totally unaware of. It happens on fundamentalist radio networks, which go all over the South and the Midwest. It goes on their media platforms and their Facebook video feeds and YouTube feeds, like Charlie Kirk's video feed. And many of them are connected to the Council for National Policy, pumping out this same message. They also created a group called America's Frontline Doctors, which included people who technically had MDs, but were not qualified in terms of their specializations to comment on the epidemic. But nonetheless, they dressed up in their white coats, they held a press conference, they've gone on media appearances, and they've not...
Oh, you're cutting out a little bit there.
For COVID.
So you cut
true.
out a little bit there.
Not
Just can you repeat the last sentence? You're just talking your signal cut out a little bit, and if you can just repeat that last bit.
Yes, they started out claiming that hydroxychloroquine, which is actually a defective medication for autoimmune diseases, was a prophylactic, preventing and curing COVID, which is just not true. It has been proven not to be true. They've now gone on to promote anti-vaxxing messages in their media platforms. And they've even gone on to talk about ivermectin as a cure for COVID. I just came back from visiting family in Oklahoma, and the veterinary stores have sold out of ivermectin, which is used for treating worm in horses. So here are these people who are saying, oh, the vaccines are unproven, but they have no proof whatsoever that ivermectin is a cure for COVID. And in fact, it is not. So we've got a media firestorm here.
Absolutely. Now, these white coats that we just showed in that press conference before, these MDs that came out to do all this messaging, you say that they were triggered at least did this in coordination with the CNP, the Council of National Policy?
Well, yes, I published an article with the Washington Spectator a few months ago, which traced the coordination. And there was a call between people who were in the Trump campaign with the leading figures from the Council for National Policy saying, oh, Americans trust doctors, so let's get some doctors who will wear their white coats and deliver this message. Now, what was the goal? The goal was to open the economy prematurely, have economic statistics that benefited the Trump campaign to advance his reelection possibilities. So they were promoting this at the height of the epidemic last year and have gone on to expand it to sow distrust. And of course, I often wonder what their motivation is for this and the harm it's doing to the public. And I can only think that it's to sow chaos in the public and to damage the Biden administration through harm delivered to countless individuals.
So you think that they're actually doing this to make the pandemic last longer?
I guess. I mean, one cannot read the heart of another, but I can't imagine the motivation of people who would do so much harm.
Now, you mentioned as well Simone Gold in in that article for the Washington Spectator, and Jenny Beth Martin, who is a member of the CNP, and he's of the executive board there, and he's also a Tea Party leader, I guess. Can you tell us a little bit about Dr. Simone Gold and what her role has been in distributing some of this disinformation?
Well, Jenny Beth Martin was a co-founder of the Tea Party Patriots and has been a very active member of the Council for National Policy and involved with their 501c4 CNP action for quite a while. And she's been an organizer. She organized the press conference of America's Frontline Doctors and Simone Gold a year ago last summer. And so she also was involved in promoting the January 6th riots in advance. Simone Gold not only spearheaded the America's Frontline Doctors initiative, she was also present at January 6th in the Capitol with a bullhorn.
Actually, I have this picture of her, which is kind of insane when you think about, here she is as a doctor and a lawyer, and there she is, inside the Capitol, looking, inside
the Capitol, delivering an anti-vaxxing message.
Yeah.
Now, she is apparently a board-certified emergency physician, but I find it impossible to explain the decisions she's made in terms of her professional profile. Maybe Nick can do better.
Indeed, Nick, this doesn't sound like it's the kind of stuff doctors should be doing, just to put it bluntly.
It really isn't what doctors should be doing. And there's this small number of physicians out there who are spreading disinformation, and a lot of it has to do with they're politically aligned, but also is that they're profiteering off of the death and suffering of others. Simone Gold specifically has linked up with a telehealth network where people can come and request to get ivermectin or hydroxychloroquine, both of which have been proven not to do anything in COVID-19. And And even of note, the manufacturers of ivermectin, Merck Pharmaceuticals, came out with a statement not long ago that said ivermectin has no proof in treating or prevented COVID-19. But they are profiting off of this disinformation as well. So it's way out of bounds for those of us who went into medicine. And we like to think that people presumably went into medicine for the right reason. That's to help people.
Mm-hmm.
And she is really abusing her standing in society, and really has crossed the line. So she's so beyond the line, and it's not just her. I mean, it's a number of physicians out there who are still fully licensed by their state medical boards, that are doing real damage that I can attest to based on my interactions that I have with patients who tell me the lies that they've been told by these physicians, because in fact they are physicians.
It's unbelievable that a doctor would do this. I mean, and to profit off it, as you say, it seems so ridiculous. Is she actually making money by joining these telehealth groups, and allowing people to get their hands on ivermectin or I can't remember. How do you say that name again?
Hydroxychloroquine.
Hydroxychloroquine. Thank you.
Yeah.
It's a tough one.
And
is she making money?
The answer is I don't know. What I do know is that during the COVID-19 pandemic, she did receive 2 PPP bailout loans. While I don't believe she was working, she was employed as an emergency medicine physician for some time, but also describes her as somebody who provides boutique C-suite medicine. I'm not sure if she had a practice, but she did receive 2 PPP loans. And to the extent that she's profiting off of this, I can only guess that she is, but that would just be a guess based on the information that is available publicly.
Let's bring in Heidi and see what people have been saying on the chat groups, and any questions you have, Heidi. This is a lot of your work that's been put all this together in terms of production and in terms of reporting. So congratulations on that, and thank you so much.
Well done, guys. Yeah, a couple things. One thing I think it's important to know for our audience to know is that Nick, during peak COVID, volunteered to go to New York to work in a COVID ward in Queens, and saw up close what things were like, and most of the people that he worked with died. And I think it's really important to know that we're talking to somebody who was literally on the ground. So I can understand why you are so passionate and vocal at your own peril to do this type of work. And all our smart viewers are saying, follow the money. And that's absolutely what we plan to do. We're going to stay on this story and see where things are going. One of the big questions, of course, that our viewers have is the why. And Anne sort of talked about that with chaos, but, okay, so you have chaos and you make Biden look bad, but why kill Americans? I think that's kind of like the main thing that people want to know. Why are they killing us? We're approaching the Spanish flu numbers at this point here.
We really are. Either of you want to take that, because it's a good discussion to have. Like, understanding why this is going on is difficult. Frankly, it's very hard to fathom why it's going on.
I'll jump in. I'll just be brief, and then Nick. So I've been in touch with some people who are political theorists who say that the people who are ultimately behind this movement have a kind of masters of the universe attitude. Mm-hmm. That they want control of the economy, they want control of the government and the political system. This is how they're going to get it. And they regard the rest of us as the little people who are ultimately roadkill. Mm-hmm. It's kind of a medieval concept of society. And I'm reluctant to believe it, but I can't easily find another explanation for why they would be so callous.
Yeah. Nick?
My understanding of this is just an extension of what we saw underneath the Trump administration, which is essentially there was, the U.S. population was the target of hybrid warfare disinformation campaign that was intended to sow chaos and maximize chaos in order for the Trump administration to capitalize on that. And that occurred by the Cambridge Analytica with their targeted disinformation campaigns to divide the country into multiple, as much as possible, divide and conquer type strategy. And that continues to this day. This is an ongoing information war. This is ongoing information warfare. And they've just moved into the most recent category, which is to continue to spread this disinformation to, I believe, prolong the pandemic, which is unbelievably callous to think or say. But that's what I'm seeing, because I can't imagine why anybody would tell anybody not to get vaccinated, given that the vaccines are so safe and so effective, that there's got to be something behind it that's much, much more nefarious. And given the history of this disinformation that we've had as part of this information warfare, I just think it's just to sow as much chaos as possible and capitalize on it.
I think you're right. We've lost Anne there. I hope she'll call back in a second. But I think, from my perspective, I think prolonging chaos is absolutely a key factor. And they must be doing something like that, because that's just the stated goal. But I wonder sometimes whether there's an element of ethnic cleansing that's going on. That, really, even though in the red states, no matter who you are, you're not getting vaccinated. There's just less vaccination. The number of people who are dying who are not white tends to be higher. And they're also the number of people who are unvaccinated tends to be higher. So it sounds macabre to say, but I think there might be an element of the people that are dying may not be their voters. I don't know if that's, I haven't done this study of the stats, and I'm a bit loath to suggest that without fully investigating that. So, I don't want to take anyone to take that as fact, but it does feel to me like that's a piece of what they're doing, is a bit of race cleansing, if there's no other way to describe it.
It's hard. That is so unfortunate to think, that I wrestled with that. But what I will say is that, by spreading disinformation to their own people, they're disproportionately causing suffering and death within the core Trump supporters. And when people are desperate, and they have death, around them and suffering, and they feel like everything is sort of collapsing, then that leads to anger, and that puts them in a state where they're easier to be manipulated.
Right.
Regarding the disproportionate effect that it's having on underserved and minority populations, is I like to think back to the way that they had this hyper-targeted focus on Facebook, where they were able to spread disinformation to different groups and deliver the right message at the right time to the right people. And it would be very interesting to see what is going on in Facebook right now, and the different demographics, what type of things they're seeing.
It is really interesting.
On their Facebook timelines.
There's a really interesting thread today, I think, by I can't remember who it was from NBC, but it was one of their big reporters who does disinformation, and he was saying that the ivermectin thing is out of control. That the amount of people pushing ivermectin in every category, it seems to have gone crazy online, and that's they're not only pushing it as a potential source, but for healing COVID, but they're also, you're right, selling it, which is just so terrifying to think that people are out there making money, but also spreading all this disinformation directly to people who are believing it. I mean, who have joined all these big ivermectin groups.
Right. Our audience is literally calling it genocide right now. I mean, that's just basically what people are looking at. And then, of course, last round with the last drug they were pushing, it wasn't very difficult to trace it back to the same people who are involved in financing CNP operations, to see they were financing the people putting the disinformation out. So again, when we look at the money and who's profiting, it's the same core group that continues to come up with the what I now call the fossil fuel fascists of the CNP. Thank you, Brent Allpress, for that.
So there's chaos.
And Heidi, there were other victims as well, because you have a whole population of people who suffer from lupus and other autoimmune diseases who were unable to access the hydroxychloroquine that they needed for their legitimate treatment. So there were shortages, being deployed for people who were not benefiting and sometimes not even, even suffering from the effects of hydroxychloroquine. You've also, in places like Oklahoma and Texas, have people who are having overdoses of ivermectin because, of course, there is no legitimate dose for this. So the damage just spreads in all directions.
And our viewers are noticing that they can't get into hospitals. They have diabetes. They're not able to get the services they need. So there's that aspect as well.
95% of ICU beds in the country are full right now. I think I read somewhere that's a remarkably high number, if it's the accurate number, but it does sound like it is. We spoke about the chaos. We spoke about profit. We haven't spoken yet about Nicki Minaj. So along comes Nicki Minaj with this tweet about her cousin in Trinidad and his friend who has these swollen testicles, and he blames it on the vaccine he took. And it creates a firestorm. She has 22 million followers online. The CDC puts out another tweet in response saying you should get vaccinated against COVID-19 if you're trying to get pregnant now or in the future. No evidence to the data shows that any vaccines, including COVID-19 vaccines, to date shows that any vaccine, including COVID-19 vaccines, can cause fertility problems in men or women. So, this has created a firestorm. It's created a big debate online. Surely some of her 22 million followers are going to, believe her. They might believe her. She probably didn't do it for any negative reasons. She probably just did it out of genuine concern. But it tells you how dangerous it is to have an environment where there's so much disinformation that someone can put out a tweet, maybe innocently, maybe not innocently, but can create a firestorm based on the volume and the environment and the whole, disinformation stratosphere that we've built ourselves. It's really dangerous. Nick?
I would recommend that people take information from their local physician and not Nicki Minaj. Nicki Minaj is an excellent artist and she should be praised for her talent, but Nicki Minaj does not have a medical degree. And I'm not saying this in a way that I am trying to say that I'm better than her or I'm more important for any reason, but it's because I know the facts and, there is no association between the vaccine and impotency. There's no association between vaccines and infertility. There's just a number of conspiracy theories that get spread that are incredibly dangerous and are leading to death. And another one of the problems you just brought up, Zev, is that our healthcare infrastructure can only handle so much. There are stories of people who haven't been able to get beds and have died due to delays in care. This was something that I read. It was a Slate article that a physician wrote about where somebody was supposed to have their gallbladder removed and didn't and died while they were waiting for care. So this has a disproportionate effect on everybody who seeks care in our healthcare system. And there's only so much capacity to care for so many people at any one given time. And people need to recognize that sooner or later, even if this doesn't affect them in terms of COVID, this may affect them in another way.
Yeah.
I'd like to add.
So go ahead.
First of all, I want to express my appreciation to Nick for coming to New York City last April when I was here and we were in the real depths of despair. This thing hit us like a tsunami. We didn't understand it. We didn't know the science. And the death rate was insane. I mean, I walked up to my office at Columbia. There was a white morgue truck a block from my office for the overflow bodies from the COVID patients. And it was just such a trauma. Now, I was a guinea pig in the Pfizer trials for the vaccine, and I'm full of admiration for the people who developed it because it has the potential to save millions of lives. But I just went to Oklahoma, and guess what? In my hometown, the hospital has set up tents the way they had in Central Park for the overflow from the hospital. And Tulsa, Oklahoma had the white refrigerator morgue trucks for the overflow bodies. Now, in April of 2020, there was an excuse. We didn't know. In August, September 2021, there is no excuse. The vaccine is there. People are being misinformed, disinformed, and the stress that it puts on the medical system and on the physicians like Nick and the entire society is just unacceptable.
Absolutely. I was actually got that first batch of COVID-19 when I was in New York that April or whatever it was. It was March for me.
Wow.
And it was the worst disease I've ever had. So I can't imagine why any leader of any political party or any movement would think to themselves that it's responsible in any way to be promulgating all these myths and lies. It just is beyond belief when you think about all the negative impact it has on people. And of course, you can still suffer long-term symptoms from long COVID. I mean, it's not like it goes away once it's cured.
The other thing about getting COVID is it's such a gamble. 4 out of 10 people who get COVID or get coronavirus don't have any symptoms at all, which
Right.
make it a really sinister virus because they can still spread it as well. And then you get people who have mild disease like nausea, vomiting, and diarrhea, to moderate disease, to severe disease, where people are getting blood clots and strokes and acute respiratory failure, where they're having to be put on ventilators. And everybody who's come in who has, at least for me, everybody who's come in who's had symptomatic COVID has said, I'm going to get vaccinated as soon as I get better, as soon as I'm able to. And it's really, it's really nice and really important to hear. But Anne's right. This is exhausting. And we're trying to do something to decrease the amount of disinformation. And a number of us have gotten together to launch No License for Disinformation. And what No License for Disinformation is it is a website where we have some of the worst offenders who are out there spreading COVID-19, and people can go and they can look and see who's on there, as well as enter physicians in who are spreading COVID-19 disinformation. And then there are links to the state medical boards where they can report them.
That's a great initiative. That's a really smart initiative. So people just go to this website and they can report violations no matter who they are. And where does it go?
Well,
who do the reports go to?
So the background on this is that throughout the coronavirus pandemic, the medical licensing boards and the board certification bodies and all the organization in medicine had been silent about disinformation. And then on July 29th, the Federation of State Medical Boards put out a statement that said that physicians who spread misinformation or disinformation may be liable to have their license suspended or revoked. And that was like a shimmer of light in the darkness for those of us who have been on the front line and have dealt with all of this death and suffering for all these years. Because it's like, finally, we have somebody who actually is in a position of power to do something about this.
Yeah.
And so consequences. And I truly believe that there are a number of physicians out there who have demonstrated that they no longer meet the criteria that are required in terms of just basic ethics to actually hold a medical license. And so we are at NLFD, no license for disinformation _.org. And there's a link to the website there. And what happens is you can go in and look at the physicians and read about the physicians who are spreading disinformation, and then it will link you to the state medical board where you can launch a complaint. You can't actually leave a complaint on the site that registers with the state medical boards, because all 50 states have individual state medical licensing boards. And what really needs to happen is, the statement has been made, and we are very, very appreciative that this statement has been made by the Federation of State Medical Boards. But the spreaders of disinformation aren't responding to strongly worded statements. There needs to be real and actual consequences. And what we need to do is register our concerns and complaints with the medical boards that these physicians are so outside the norms of practicing physicians and are so outside the norms of the medical consensus about vaccines being safe and effective, and about ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine, and other types of medications not being effective at all, that they no longer they should no longer have a medical license. And it's really going to take a popular movement to tell the medical boards, it's time to do something about this. Unless they do something about this, this pandemic is going to continue on and on and on and on. And we really need to shut down this pipeline of disinformation. And so that's a strategy that we're taking. And I'm hoping that people will go to that website and
really great.
file
So
complaints, as well as call the medical boards.
So the domain name is no license for disinformation.org, or you mentioned a shorter version as well.
Yeah, on Twitter, on Facebook, Instagram, and on TikTok even, it's at NLFD_org. It's just no license for disinformation.org. And, this is going to have to be a popular movement. This is really on us to make this happen. Because
absolutely. It's a great idea. Congratulations. That's really fantastic.
It's not happening. Well, thanks for giving us a microphone here.
Absolutely. So the people putting their information, they say who the violators are. You don't keep that information. They would have to go to the boards once they refer to it and then report it there. That's correct.
Yeah, there's all the information that they will need there in order to understand who these. It's a very small number of physicians. The vast majority of physicians out there are working to stop this pandemic and stop coronavirus. But it's a very small number, so they'll see the information there. They'll see the license number. They can click the link to file a report. And when you go to file a report, you just fill out the information and what they've done wrong. And there's plenty of public information about what these physicians have done wrong. And it's not hard to do. It's really not hard to file complaints.
It's a terrific project you're involved in there. Someone was asking online, is there a legislation that could be passed, or is there legislation that's applicable in terms of like the AIDS legislation, where if you're infecting people or you're helping people infecting other people, that you're actually liable in front of the law? Is there such legislation out there? Does either of you know, Anne or Nick, if there's something like that out there?
So I think that's a tremendous idea. I think federal legislation is going to be really challenging, given the close division between in the Senate. I don't imagine that would ever pass through the Senate. In California, they have been working on a bill about disinformation, but it stalled out before the latest legislative session ended. I just learned about it recently the other day. It's called AB 133. If anybody wants to look it up, it's you go to calleg.gov. But it stalled out right before the legislation ended, and I'm interested to learn more about it and see what they do with that, because we need a tougher stance.
Yeah, that's interesting. We'll look into that. And before we let both of you go, I just want to put a button on this whole thing about the CNP being involved in this. You mentioned there's a series of meetings that maybe happened early on. What's been going on since that early on meeting? Like, has this been a continuing thing that the Council of National Policy are involved in? Are they still pursuing this incredibly dangerous and deadly strategy?
Well, we've got documentation that they helped set it in motion. There was a recording of various phone calls that we have access to, where they state the plan and then they carry out the plan, and then Jenny Beth Martin and Simone Gold and others continue. Simone Gold has presented her case at the secret Council for National Policy meetings, so we've got those agendas. Now, following the money isn't always easy in these cases, but if you look at my book, Shadow Network, you can see how the money and the media and the strategists are tightly coordinated. So the fact that she's been appearing in places like Charlie Kirk, he's another member from Turning Point USA. She's been on his video show. She's been on fundamentalist broadcasters. So this could not happen without their ongoing support. And again, it also plays into their strategy, because they've been working with the 30 Republican-controlled state legislatures to pass voter suppression laws and other ways to guarantee that they take Congress next year, regardless of the popular vote, by disqualifying electors and various laws. So they have partner organizations. One is ALEC, the other is Heritage Action, that have been going state by state in coordination with these other activities. And I think the key word with this group is coordination.
Right. And you spoke about your book, which is an excellent book. Everyone should read it. It's absolutely essential. Shadow Network, Media Money, and the Secret Hub of the Radical Right. This is really what your book is about, is how coordinated this effort is, that it doesn't just exist in one sphere of influence. It exists in every sphere of influence. And it's a fantastic read. So tell people a little bit more about what they can expect from this book. It's now out on paperback, I think.
It's a paperback with a new chapter about how this played into the COVID disinformation as well as January 6th. And basically I trace it back 40 years to a group of fundamentalist televangelists and fossil fuel interests that decided that they were losing the popular will in the United States, that Americans were becoming more progressive and more tolerant, and this was not satisfactory to them. So they set out ways to find ways to game the system. And they have never expected to win the popular vote. They have never won it. They never will. But there are various ways to manipulate the Electoral College and congressional elections that give them a disproportionate amount of power. And they're also trying to advance this through state laws. The latest version of this is the absolutely draconian Texas abortion law. So a woman with ectopic pregnancy who will never deliver a viable baby and who may well lose her life in the process is barred from having a procedure. A 12-year-old who's raped and is, 4'10" is required to bear that baby. It's just horrific what they're doing. And they intend to leverage it across state lines to other Republican-controlled legislatures and divide this country in the cruelest way you can imagine.
And that really is for power. When we had Dr. Steve Hassan on last week, he also mentioned that, I was surprised to hear, that the Moonies were a part of the CNP in their early days. Is that true? I mean, are the Moonies a party to the CNP?
They certainly show up in the research of the early days of the Council for National Policy, and a researcher named David Troy has established various intelligence links. But I think that if you go to anyone in the constellation of the radical right, there'll be some kind of primary or secondary contact there someplace. But the CNP itself has been a group of 400 plus or minus individuals who are working on this agenda quite aggressively.
I was really surprised and kind of horrified when I saw Donald Trump addressing the Moonies on the weekend. It just, besides it being September the 11th, just shocking to see an American president in front of a cult, which is, whose stated intention is to take over America. Just mind-blowing. All right. Well, thank you both for being on the show. Really appreciate your time. I know, Nick, you've got really important, serious work to get back to. So I appreciate you being here. And tell people again, it's no license for disinformation.org or NLFD_ at various social networks. Is that right?
Yeah, it's at NLFD_org. And I know the domain name's really long, no license for disinformation. So we'll get a domain name that's shorter, but it's accessible right on the page.
Well, it's a terrific project you're involved in, and thank you so much for bringing it to Narativ tonight. Anne, thank you so much for being here as well. Any of you want to share any last thoughts before we move on? The microphone's yours if you'd like to say anything else.
I'll just say that this is the year for citizen activism, because our democracy is at stake, our public health is at stake, and this should not be a question of whether you've traditionally been a Democrat or a Republican. It's not a matter of that. It's a matter of citizens of our.
You cut out there, but.
So I hope everybody explores ways that they help.
I think that's absolutely true. We all have to get involved this year. This is the year to do it, and we're just under over a year left before the next election. Of course, everyone needs to get involved if they can. So Anne's book is called Shadow Network: The Media, Money, and the Secret Hub of the Radical Right. Please buy it. You'll love it. And thank you both to Anne and Nick for joining us tonight. And we'll be right back after this with some news about Jeffrey Epstein and that George Bush painting. Hey everybody, thanks for supporting Narativ. If quality and craftsmanship is important to you, and of course it is to you, you should check out today's sponsor, Made In. Made In is a cookware and kitchenware brand that works with renowned chefs and artisans to produce some of the world's best pots, pans, knives, and wine glasses. The best chefs around the world use Made In cookware and kitchenware to create all the best tasting restaurant quality meals. Made In sources the finest materials and partners with renowned craftsmen to make premium kitchen tools available directly to you without the markup. Their pots, pans, knives, and wine glasses produced by Made In are among the best in the world. They are built to last and offer a lifetime warranty. They have 28,000 five-star reviews, and their products are used by some of the world's best chefs at Michelin-starred restaurants around the world. Made In, better cookware for better meals. Right now, Made In is offering our listeners 15% off your first order with promo code Narativ. That's 15% of your first order with promo code Narativ. It's the best discount available anywhere online for Made In products. So go to madeincookware.com/narrative and use the promo code Narativ, Narativ, for 15% off your first order. That's madeincookware.com/narrative. Use promo code Narativ. Hey everybody, thanks for supporting Narativ. Hi friends, thanks for supporting Narativ. This portion of the show is brought to you by Policy Genius. Summer's coming to an end and the leaves are about to fall. And while Mother Nature does her thing preparing for the new season, you can do yours by getting free life insurance quotes with Policy Genius. You could save $1,300 or more per year on life insurance by using Policy Genius simply to compare policies. The licensed experts at Policy Genius work for you, not the insurance companies, so you can trust them to help you navigate every step of the shopping and buying experience. Policy Genius's excellent service has been endorsed by thousands of five-star reviews on Trustpilot and Google, and eligible applicants can get covered in as little as a week thanks to an award-winning policy option that swaps the standard medical exam requirement for a simple phone call. This exclusive policy was recently rated #1 by Forbes Advisor, higher than options from Ladder, Ethos, and Bestow. Visit policygenius.com and you'll be able to work out your coverage needs. Oh, I've been having a lot of trouble with those things today. But you should visit policygenius.com for your policy needs because they do good. Do good stuff over there. I'm not sure that ad's going to qualify, but seriously, policygenius.com. It's up to $1,300 for your $1,300 off for your life insurance quotes there. And the good thing is that you get to compare all the different life insurance agency quotes against each other, so you make sure you don't get ripped off. There are no fees. It's a good place. Policygenius.com. That's where you should get your life insurance. So I was going to talk a little more about Ghislaine Maxwell. You know, this last weekend, of course, was 9/11. And we also found out not only that we were marking that day with the 20th anniversary, but we also found out that the FBI finally revealed those documents that have confirmed what many of us have suspected, that the Saudis did in fact support many of the 9/11 terrorists. And we all sort of knew that, right? I think I knew that. I mean, it certainly seems like it's been floating around in the ether for a while, and some of these documents have been previously referred to in other investigations. So we've known that that's a real thing. But what we didn't get, and I think this is a question that people still need to answer, is what did George Bush know? And when did he know it? Because it's all very well that the Saudis were involved in this, but George Bush, famously funded by the Saudis and supported by the Saudis, also had that photograph of him surrounded by the Saudi ambassador on the White House patio over there. When did he know that this was a Saudi supported event? It may not have been on 9/11, but surely soon afterwards, you would have found out something like that. And so that's a question that I think we still should be asking. And while we're looking into all of this, we were all reminded about the painting that Jeffrey Epstein had, which is this really iconic painting that was painted by a student at the New York Arts Academy. Many of you will recall the stories around it. There are, in fact, a series of 2 paintings. The one on the left, as you can see, is Bill Clinton in a dress, very provocatively dressed. And obviously a reference there, many people think, to Monica Lewinsky. The one on the right is George Bush, and he is holding a paper plane, and there are 2 collapsed stacks of dominoes on the floor that are really evocative of 9/11. He's sitting in front of the Oval Office desk, so it seems to me like a real dig at him. In fact, they both seem like they're swipes at the former presidents. These are certainly not positive portrayals. So I contacted the author of the Ghislaine Maxwell and unauthorized biography, which is Kirby Summers, who's a friend of the show, and many people know about Kirby, and asked her what she thought about this. I mean, is there any indication that what we're seeing here is, is something that Epstein both owned? Did he own both paintings? Well, there's some uncertainty about whether that he owned both, but there's also what were they intended to do? So here's what Kirby had to say.
If it had not been for a woman who had an appointment with Jeffrey Epstein at his Upper East Side Manhattan mansion, walked into his home, and she was very surprised to see this rather large painting of Bill Clinton wearing a blue dress and high heels, pointing at the observer. And she was so surprised that she took out her camera, because everybody has a camera these days, and she snapped a photograph. And she sent that photograph, I believe, to the Daily Mail. She was subsequently interviewed by a couple of other papers, but she wants to remain anonymous. But however, one of the quotes says, "It was absolutely Bill Clinton. It was shocking. It was definitely a painting of him. It was a very provocative, sensual picture. He was wearing heels, a blue dress, and his hand was in a weird position." And then she basically said that she had an hour-long meeting with Epstein and that he came off as really creepy. And then when she was leaving, there was a young 14-year-old Spanish girl, 14-year-old girl waiting to see him next. Now, what's interesting is that if that person had not taken a photograph and given it to the media, it would be denied. Right. So what's happened is, for the painting, exactly like you mentioned, it's called War Games. It was painted by the same artist, Katrina Ryan Clyde, who went to the New York Academy of Art. She painted both in 2012. They both were exhibited at the same time. I think I sent you a photograph of the exhibit.
That's interesting that they were both exhibited.
If it had...
So that's interesting, right? So now we both know they were exhibited at the same time. I mean, they're, both paintings are really disgusting. Exhibited by the same time, painted by an Australian student at the New York Academy of Art in 2012, sold for $1,300 a piece. It seems likely to me that why would Epstein have just bought the one painting? He likely would have bought both, because money was not really a factor to him. And these are pretty unique artworks. I'm almost sure that he would have created them himself, or at least have commissioned them himself. It seems bizarre to me that an Australian student would have come up with this much detail about what essentially conspiracies, so early on. What's your take on this, Heidi?
We just know it's creepy.
Yeah.
My take is that it's creepy, and Epstein's creepy, and the world that we're going to be delving back in with Ghislaine and, what comes from that trial is going to just be massively creepy. But I think when it comes to 9/11, we need what my friend Jeff Stein calls a cleansing. We need to know what happened. We need to know who was involved. We absolutely need to know what our intelligence agencies did or didn't know. And for us to move forward and fully heal as a nation, I think we need to know all the facts.
I think you're 100% right there. And I think the reason that we need to know is not just for the healing piece of it and the reconciliation piece of it. But when you look at these two paintings, I mean, my suspicion is that we are talking about something that was potentially used as a blackmail item. These are the equivalent of seeing, of handing someone black and white photos in a dirty manila envelope. They're designed to embarrass presidents of the United States. And I think as we try to understand what Jeffrey Epstein did, and why he did what he did, which I think is crucial to national security going forward, and is crucial to understanding exactly how Trump got into power, then we need to understand what these paintings really were. It's not just a curiosity. It could be a lot more. It seems to me that he was running a blackmail ring against many really influential people in America, and we don't know to what end, and we don't know how successful it was. But as we start seeing even people like Prince Andrew being involved in something like this, which is clearly somehow involved. There's a civil litigation starting, and Ghislaine Maxwell's going to court next month or the month after. I think this is something that we really need to be paying attention to. People are sort of sick and tired of Epstein, and I get that. But I also think it's one of those things we got to look at in order to really understand what has been happening in the last, 20, 30 years in America. I think this goes back that long. So, absolutely people should be paying attention as we head into these two court cases. Tomorrow on the show, we have another piece of the same investigation, because today we looked at the CNP and we looked at how doctors are being influenced and how doctors are putting out disinformation. Tomorrow on the show, we're going to be telling people how other operatives might be involved. Here we are again talking about spies wherever we talk about these
so
things.
Strange.
But, are foreign operatives involved?
Yes, you broke that big story last week on Charles Bousman, and we have another character similar that has so many curious ties, and we're going to take you to the White Coat Summit that occurred just a few weeks ago, and we're going to show you some of the disinformation points that were spoken there, how they infected the anti-vax narrative, and then we're going to backtrack and show you where and who these people might be affiliated with and why. So it should be what you learned today should really prep you and prime you for what you're going to learn tomorrow.
Can't wait for that. That's tomorrow at 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern. Don't forget, you can always support Narativ by going to patreon.com/Narativ and supporting us there. We also have there I am. We also have a merch store at narativmyshopify.com where you can get all sorts of cool gear and stuff, and there's always new stuff being thrown into that shop, and we'll add something later this week, so don't forget to check out our store or our Patreon site. Otherwise, we'll see you here tomorrow at 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern. I do want to say one last thing. I've got to do the ad that I kind of screwed up, so as I go away, I'm going to tell people about one more piece of information from our sponsors. Is there anything else from you, Heidi? Because you've done such a great job tonight and last week, and looking at tomorrow's show, it's really interesting. Any last thoughts from you as we head out of the show tonight? Oh. I'm sorry. Is your microphone on mute, maybe, or I can't hear you? There you are. I'm sorry. There you are. My bad.
My last thought is that celebrities have the ability to use their platform for good or for bad. And I just would encourage those celebrities who are throwing their weight one way or the other to really think about it, because a lot of people will be affected. And I think the fight starts right here. Nick announced what's going on, and I think we just carry the fight right here.
Absolutely. Great way to end the show. And especially, it'd be interesting to see if Nicki Minaj changes her thinking as the days go on here on that story. So good night, Heidi. And I'll just let our viewers know that here's an interesting question. Why are 97% of the chickens served in the United States dipped in chlorine? Yes, dipped in chlorine. Believe it or not, that's not something you'd particularly expect. Well, the answer is simple, because Big Food doesn't have the same quality standards as the family farm. That's why you need moinkbox.com. With Moink, you get the highest quality meat you've ever tasted while supporting real family farms. Moink delivers grass-fed and grass-finished beef and lamb, pastured pork and chicken, and wild-caught Alaskan salmon direct to your door, helping family farms become financially independent outside of big agriculture. Their animals are raised outdoors, their fish swim wild in the ocean, and Moink meat is free of antibiotics, hormones, sugar, and all the other junk you find prepackaged in the meat aisle. I love Moink, and I know you will too. Moink meat is so delicious. If you want to get the absolute best quality while supporting the little guy, I recommend you get Moink right now. Join the Moink movement today. Go to moinkbox.com/Narativ right now. And listeners to this show get free bacon for a year. That's 1 year of the best bacon you'll ever taste, but for a limited time. Spelt Moink, MOINK, box.com. That's moo and oink together. It makes Moink/Narativ. That's moinkbox.com/Narativ, Narativ. You'll get your free bacon for a year. Sounds like a good deal. And on that note, thank you very much for joining us on Narativ tonight. We'll see you again tomorrow at 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 Eastern for our second part in our investigation as we look into the anti-vaxxers and the myths surrounding them. Thanks for joining us. Have a good night.